Welcome to my latest update of the build series for my truck camper. In this update, I'm continuing with the build out of the tub that provides the foundation for the the whole camper. I'm anxious to get to building walls and whatnot, but if I don't do a good foundation, then obviously the rest doesn't have much to sit on. Here I am reinforcing the bulkhead that goes between the water tanks and the batteries. Before the video's over, I'll add a second plywood panel to the other side. In fact, I do that to all of the bulkheads. But in this case, right now, I'm preparing to glue in the floor. Well, it's not really the floor, but the bottommost insulation and sidewall panels for the tub there. And the reason that I'm putting the little 1x2s in between the bulkheads is so that they can take the weight of the water tank and the batteries. The bottom panel and the insulation, it's a sandwich panel, but it's not really structural. It's more of a cladding to insulate, and it can't really take the weight of the tank and batteries. It would just sag and put a lot of stress on even though it's fiberglass. The idea is for the trusses here to sustain all the weight and when the camper is up on its legs, and so that's what I'm adding the floor for. In this case, I'm not installing it, but I'm getting ready so that I can glue the insulation in and use all the bulkheads to essentially clamp and wedge everything into place. So this is just prep. But before I installed the insulation, I wanted to do a fit test and make sure that everything was going to fit on the truck. And so a friend came over and helped me put it in there. It's up on 2x4s. It won't be quite that high in the bed, but my real concern was front to back fit. I only have about a ½ inch between the tailgate and the back of the camper. I'm going to have to put something in there to take all the rubbing, but that was my concern, and so I decided to proceed. The adhesive here isn't really doing much structurally, but it just feels wrong to not use it, so I'm putting it in and holding the panels at least together while I'm working on it. I'm using the spray, or not spray foam, but the expanding foam. I've only ever used it to fill a hole before, and so this is kind of a first time with me. It's pretty tenacious stuff, and it's nasty. Even with acetone, it's hard to get it off your hands. I had a spill or whatever while I was applying it and got it all over my hand, and it's been on my hand for many days before I finally got it all off. In this case here, I'm filling in the corner gaps in the bottom because the corners actually have 1x2 or 2x2s in them essentially, and there's a gap between the vertical and horizontal pieces of 2-inch thick foam. And so I fill all those gaps in there, and now I'm putting the bulkheads and stuff in place where they should be once I secure them with screws and nails and whatever. But right now they're just here to clamp everything while the foam and adhesive cure. I did a little experiment and squirted some foam in between the plywood and the insulation panel. Bad idea. It expanded more than I expected it to and just pushed out the panel, creating an air pocket that I didn't really want. Shouldn't hurt anything, won't even be visible. It'll be under the kitchen counter there, but lesson learned, I won't be doing that. So here I am installing with fasteners, screws, those floor panels, and I'm also adding a second piece of plywood to each of the bulkheads along with the diagonal and vertical internal pieces just to strengthen it. The weight of both the water tank and those batteries all in that area is going to be quite a bit, and I don't know that it has to be there, but I wanted to make sure I had enough strength. Better to be safe than sorry type thing. So in these next clips, I'm getting ready to put the bottom panels on the wings in, and these 2x4, the 2x1, yeah, I guess they're 2x2s mostly there. They warped after I cut them and then left them sitting for a while, and as I was putting this one on here, I got a gap in it and didn't notice, or else internal tension relieved as I was trimming it to try and make it fit, or a combination of whatever, but it just gave me fits, and I kept trimming the edge because in here when I'm trying to fit it into the gap that I'd measured out, it just wasn't fitting, and so I kept trimming off, and I went back and forth and back and forth, and finally flipped the thing over, and that's that's what it was. You can see the glue there, and the picture doesn't really show, but the board is warped, and by then I'd trimmed off, I don't know, close to a 1/4 inch, but out at the end there, trying to get it all to fit. Anyway, don't know exactly what happened, but structurally yeah, it's kind of a critical point. It's right underneath where the the stilts or the landing gear will bolt on, but I think I'll still have plenty of strength with all the plywood and everything working together as a system. Should be fine. Nothing is true or perfect on this camper, but I did take some time right here to try and level out both sides before I glued on those wing panels and proceeded any further, just to try and make sure that I got it as close as is practical, but couldn't spend too much time. Well, with boards warping at the rate that they are as they dry out, they're not properly dried, and so anyway, this is the second one. It went a little better than the first, more of a gap than I wanted because I didn't want to have the same back and forth and back and forth, but I was able to pull it in. The long edge there, because the boards do warp, I'm putting a temporary 1x2 to just support the span until I'm ready to put the vertical wall. However, I messed up and I had to take it off, and I ground out the tops of the nails like I was removing rivets. Shouldn't hurt anything structurally because that whole edge will fit right on the top of that 2x4 and be fastened down there. But anyway, the other side I'll have to remove the nails later, but for this side I just clamped it, hold it in place for now. Here I'm building out, putting the second piece of plywood on each of the bulkheads just to strengthen them up, just to make sure I have the strength, because really all of the weight of the camper is supported by those trusses when it's up on it. Well, when it's sitting in the bed or up on the stilts, then it's in the sling, but the idea is that really the internal floor area is supposed to support all the weight of it either way. And so I added the second sheet of plywood, and it stiffened it up a lot, and so glad I did that. I have a friend, the friend who helped me lift my camper into the back of the bed. He's building a chicken coop, and I feel for him. I'm fortunate to be working in a garage. Here is a layup or mock-up of the gradient that I'm putting in underneath the black tank. I'm just going to be creating my own fiberglass tank. And so here was kind of, I'm just eyeballing it. I think I put about 3 inches on one end, down to 0 on the other, over a little less than a 4-foot span. And that's kind of how it looks. There's a big gap up top left corner, but it's all supported, and I tried to straighten it out before I put all the fasteners in, but it didn't want to straighten too much, and I decided to go with what I had. That's it for this week. Thanks for watching.